Hi, Trevor here, reflecting on life through music. Thank you for stopping by. Well, come in, you're very welcome again. I trust you enjoyed the last video on Gene Kelly, the immortal dance screen legend. And through his life, we looked at the charisma he brought to his stage and the joy he brought to millions around the world. So I trust you found his story an inspiring thing for yourself. Well, we go on from there to pretty well the pioneers of progressive rock. Peter Gabriel, of course, we know that he's gone on to do a bit of solo career. Tony Banks, Mike Rutherford, and there was also Chris Stewart and Anthony Phillips at the start. And a little bit further down the track, Phil Collins joined the group, and guys were talking about a Genesis. Now, because of the significance of these guys and the fact that there were just so many songs that I know, and I thought, we're going to give these guys a couple of videos. This time we'll look a little bit more at just their music career, and next time we'll look a little bit more at their impact and influence. So the story started in Goldening in Surrey in 1967. So there we go. That's a fair while ago. They signed a one-year deal with Decca Records at the start, and there was a bit of toing and froing and all the rest of it. And then it was around 1970 that Phil Collins joined as on drums, and Steve Hackett on guitar, bass, and a few other things that this guy does. And it was around 1974 that Peter Gabriel decided that he kind of wanted to go off and do his own thing, and Phil Collins took up the mantle as lead singer. Now, the story goes that they auditioned lots and lots of people for this role of lead singer because of the Phil Collins drumming is pretty amazing. But Phil was kind of taking each of these auditionees under their wings, and they said, hang on a minute, we might have the lead singer here. So Phil Collins has been the lead singer of Genesis ever since. Between 1969 and 1997, 15 studio albums, 6 live albums, 4 compilation albums, 8 video albums, 32 music videos, 2 EPs, 43 singles, and 8 box sets. It's estimated somewhere between 100 and 150 million albums sold worldwide, and a lot of those albums have been released and digitally remastered, which is a pretty amazing thing to be able to do when all of your albums actually get that treatment. Now, we all know that it was in around that when Phil Collins joined the band, that album Chick of the Trail became an iconic album of all time. And the thing that Genesis is well and truly is progressive rock. Now, I love progressive rock. We can thank the UK for progressive rock and think about bands such as Yes, Electric Light Orchestra, the Buggles, and of course Genesis, the Moody Blues, just to name a few. There's a bit of a community of progressive rock in the UK, with these guys kind of ushered in that genre. And of course Asia, we can track those guys in there as well. Now, the thing about progressive rock is, first of all, you've got to be really, really good. Normally with progressive rock, you've got some pretty amazing instrumentalist stuff going on. You've got some pretty elaborate instrumentation arrangement of the songs going on. The songs aren't just songs, they're actually works of art. Sometimes these songs go on for a while, which is well and truly the case with Genesis. So I think that we can take about progressive rock. Yes, these songs can go on for a while, but we've got to put that aside and think just how clever this is. Because to be able to lay down, say, a 10-minute track in a studio with all the stuff that you need to do and all the bits and the layers, it's a pretty huge deal to be able to do that. So you've got to really, really love what you're doing to do that. And this is well and truly the case with Genesis. Certainly those the Peter Gabriel area, he wasn't scared to dress up in a few different clothes. And it's very much a show, these guys. It wasn't just a bunch of songs on stage. It was a show. And Peter Gabriel certainly captured that whole Genesis essence. And we all know that Peter Gabriel went on to have a pretty amazing career after that with that album So, Sledgehammer. But, you know, it was when I suppose the trio, the iconic trio of Rutherford, Banks and Collins settled. And when you think about those three, you've also got to add Steve Hackett in there, who I've already mentioned, and Chester Thompson. Now, Chester Thompson is a pretty amazing drummer. We all know how good Phil Collins is. We'll get on to his solo career in a little while, but his drumming is amazing. And so to have to drum for Genesis, you've got to be pretty good. And this is really truly the case with Chester Thompson. Of course, when you go to see a Genesis concert, there's often two kids on stage because, Phil Collins can't help himself. He's got to get up on the drums. And if you go to a Genesis concert, you want to see him drumming, absolutely. And sometimes you want to have two kits going at the same time. So to be able to coordinate two drum kits with everything else that's going on, it's pretty amazing. Genesis would admit that first and foremost that they are songwriters, and the challenge with Genesis is you cannot restrict these guys to one video because it's just so many songs. And I thought I needed to do a few just to capture their capture who they are. They've got influences of pop, folk, and psychedelic. And they, as I said, pioneers in progressive rock as well. Through many bands have laid the theme for them afterwards. If you think about, first of all, Phil Collins' drums, he doesn't play the drums. He actually talks through them. He actually creates and composes through his drums. And so he's got his drums set up in such a way that they tell a story. And there's just three of you on stage, and of course, Tony Banks. Actually, before we get on to Tony Banks, let's talk about Mike Rutherford. Of course, Phil has gone on to get a pretty amazing solo career as well. Let's talk about Mike Rutherford. Mike Rutherford was very happy just to be in the background and just dabble in a bit of rhythm guitar, particularly on 12 strings. But when Steve Hackett left the band, well, Mike Rutherford actually took on the role of lead guitar. So to be able to do rhythm and lead and all the rest of the stuff that you do with the length of time that these songs go for is pretty amazing. Of course, Mike Rutherford went on to do Mike and the Mechanics, which is another pretty amazing band. I was thinking he was looking forward to, I think as Phil Collins found too, doing something a little bit less laid back and a little bit less intense than Genesis actually is. And so, they've both gone on and had some pretty amazing careers outside of Genesis, but they will always come back to where it all started. And Tony Banks, so you've got Phil doing the drums, you've got Mike doing his beautiful rhythmic guitar stuff, and then you add Tony Banks on top of here, and he's considered one of the greatest keyboard players of all time, this guy. And the way that what he does, he tends to do just single melodic notes over the top of what everything else is going on, just to add a bit of landscape and soundscape to what is the Genesis sound. So you put the three of them together and you have Genesis. What more can we say? Now, with progressive rock, as I talked about, you've got to have the vocals really good. You've got to have your harmonies pretty good. Genesis aren't so much on the harmonies though, because their instrumentation is their harmonies very much. You've got to have really good songs, and you've got to know how to play your instruments really well. And you've got to be able to, I suppose, get quite complex with what you do, because you're not just musicians, you are geniuses at what you do. So I've got a few clips on Genesis below. First of all, we got Follow You, Follow Me. This came from, and then there were three albums from 1978. And this is an official clip on this one, and you'll get to, and when you hear that thing at the start with the guitar, that's Mike Rutherford doing that, and you see what I mean? That just goes all the way through the song, and this is what just adds the depth to the song, is how incredible the guitar playing is. And so we've got that one. We then got Abacab. This came from the 1981 album of the same name. This song was a pretty popular song for Genesis and stayed in the top 40 for 6 weeks. I've got a live version of this one from 1987 and the Invisible Touch tour. And here we got Chester Thompson and Steve Hackett back with the other three. There's a pretty amazing live version of Abacab. This bass line which Steve's doing in this particular clip is pretty full on. It just keeps the whole thing moving and keeps it absolutely cranking along. So we got Abacab. We then got this iconic, this ingenious little clip, Firth of Fifth. Now, are there any musicians out there? We're talking 13, 16 and 15, 16 tempos here, and then alternating with 2, 4. Now 1316 is 30 semiquavers to the bar. So that's just happening. So you've got to imagine that's a really, really obscure beat right there. And to be able to actually get everybody to do what they're doing with this one is pretty amazing. So you've got to have Firth of Fifth in there just to display how incredible these guys actually are, how amazing their musicianship. And then we go into I Know What I Like with a bit of a lead instrumental by Steve Hackett. This came from the album Selling England by the Pound, and this is very much a bit of a political statement, political commentary album from Genesis, and they sort of weren't scared to do that during their career. And then I thought we'd also go to, from the 1983 album just titled Genesis, we've got Home by the Sea and then Second Home by the Sea. This is one of those songs that if you go to a Genesis concert you want to hear, because there's some pretty beautiful melody, and this just shows off Phil Collins at vocals so well. We know how good a vocalist this guy actually is. We know that to be able to sing at the complexity that Genesis actually is takes some doing, and you know he just captures the melody so well. Home by the Sea is one bit. Then we got Second Home by the Sea, and this is where it's a little bit more instrumental based, and Phil Collins of course has to go back to the kit at this point. And here see Chester and Phil actually doing things in tandem with each other, actually just enabling what is a pretty powerful performance on stage. This is from the concert in Rome in 2007. Now, if you want a Genesis DVD, get this one. In fact, I'm thinking I might need to get this one myself. It's a live version of that one. So the links to those 1, 2, 3, 4 clips are in the description below, and I've also included my last video from Gene Kelly, so you want to recap on him, feel free. Just before I go though, the concept of following you, following me, I suppose this is the life reflections part of this video, and that is, it's a beautiful picture of what it means to be in a relationship where you're in each other's life. There's no leader. You're collaborating together, you're walking hand in hand forward together as opposed to one taking over. So I will follow you, you will follow me, I want you to follow me, and I want to follow you. That sort of thing. So it's a beautiful thing too. If we can drop the defense and the pretenses and all the rest and that look at me thing and just realize actually we're in a relationship, so we don't need to do that. It's just very much a simple case of just walking together as you follow me. Such a beautiful song. Another good thing about Genesis is the way that they just create space in their songs, and this is really truly the case here. Right from Mike's incredible guitar playing at the start to Tony's incredible keyboards, and of course Phil's incredible drums and vocals, just creates the space we need to be able to reflect on our relationships as we go forward. So thank you for staying with me today as we've looked at this incredible band Genesis. We're going to go on to these guys again next time with a little bit more about their impact and some of the accolades they've received, and we'll get on to some pretty amazing songs next time as well. So until then, I'll catch you around. Bye for now.